Last year, I really got into comic books. I stumbled upon the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel and just fell in love with their analysis, their deep dives into the very popular comics as well as the indie comics. And comics is something that I've always loved in my life. I mean, I've already made a bunch of videos about it on this channel, but it was through the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel that I really discovered my love again of indie comic book creators. The idea of someone going out there with no resources and just trying to put their vision on the page or on any art has always captivated me. And I love it in movie form. But the issue with movies is that it's a collaborative effort by definition of having to make one of those films. So you need a bunch of people and it's very difficult. While comics, oftentimes, it's just one person. So it's pure, it's uncut, and you can find it at its most potent in power comics. Now, power comics is a term that I believe Evan Husney, who runs the Power Comics YouTube channel and Instagram, coined himself. It's kind of an offshoot of outlaw comics, which is what Cartoonist Kayfabe calls it, which are comics that came out usually in black and white following the big success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But even that is kind of too specific a generalization for what power comics are, especially the ones that I'm going to talk about today, in that it can cover a wide gamut of stuff. I mean, right here we have Vendetta, Holy Vindicator. And so Power Comics is a YouTube channel. And last year, they started releasing reprints of classic comics, oftentimes ones that were only printed in batches of like 1,000, in these beautiful paperback right here. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, single issues, because not everything can be collected in a paperback. Now, what Evan and his pals are doing is like a dream of mine. I wish someone had done this for the longest time, had collected stuff that they're really passionate about, but is really difficult to find, and done in beautiful editions with tons of context. Like, this Vendetta issue has interviews, it has essays. This was created by Steve McCardle, and it's basically, I mean, Image Comics-esque, but with like a very specific bent. And it also has so much visual creativity in it. The thing about like power comics at their best is that you'll look at them and they won't be technically polished. They'll look odd. The anatomy is going to be all over the place. But the imagination is just so all over the page. It's people that are creating stuff that they've always wanted to do their entire life. So they're putting their all into it. And that is 100% the case with Vendetta, which lasted only a few issues. It's essentially a Spawn-like character who's kind of inspired by the Bible. He quotes Bible quotes, as you can see right here, but then, you know, that kind of gets tossed as it goes further into the run. Like, you look at this, and it's easy to say, oh, you know, this is a beginner artist. Look at these, you know, faces. They kind of look the same, or figures are, you know, all over the place. But I love it. Like, look at the detail. Look at the brick in the background. Look at these angles that he's using throughout these comics. Look at this beautiful splash page. When these kind of comics are at their best, again, it's when, like, it's just filled with so much detail here that it almost hurts the eye to look at. Now, would I want all my comics to look like this? No, probably not. But it's just beautiful in the way that it's presented here. You can feel through every reprinted page Steve's just passion for what he's doing. Like, look at this devil here. Look how awesome he looks. This character, perhaps he is, I don't know, inspired by Spawn a little bit. I'm so glad I could get it in this trade paperback form. This is the way that it should be read. You get all the context as well at the end, pinups, essays, an interview with Steve. This is the stuff that I wish like every comic book included, was not just pinups at the end, but just kind of like a dive into the process. I mean, Steve even created his own custom action figures for his runs of Vendetta. You even get the back matter here. This is like the ultimate version, or should be the blueprint of what reprinting indie comics should be. Because, oh man, I love it. I love going through it and just soaking it all in. Look at that. I mean, you may not be a fan of this kind of 90s imageization of comic books, like the muscles, the gun, the looks, but when it's filtered through someone like Steve putting this comic out, it just has so much invention. And I know I keep saying that, but I don't know how to describe it in better terms or to sell it to you to pick this up. Like, if you're looking at this and you go, oh, this is not really my style, avoid power comics entirely, because none of it will be your style. You need to be open to different interpretations of art, some that could be defined as being amateurish, when in reality, not really, because you don't need the basic building blocks to instill your vision in a reader. because it's so pure here, because it's just one person doing it, if there's a commitment and a drive, you can get it right out there. I mean, there's a lot of text here, but that just fits the like wild detail that you're seeing in all of these pages, which, you know, most artists would probably recommend not doing because it's very busy and the pencil mileage on it is probably not worth it in terms of like how much time it will take to draw versus what the effect will be on the reader. But I adore seeing it on these pages. When I picked this up, I actually had no idea what it was going to be. But when I started reading, I'm like, oh, okay, I understand why this was the one that they went first for. Power Comics and Floating World. Floating World is one that a publisher that I only discovered recently. They've been around for ages. They're actually a comic book store, like a physical standing space. And they do all the awesome comics that no one else wants to touch, like Power Comics. You also have like a lot of art books that they put out. The only thing that I don't like about Floating World Comics is that there's no easy to read database of when their new releases are coming out, short of maybe reading like the Diamond magazine, which has all the new releases. Like stuff will come out and I will be shocked that it's there. I'm like, huh, what? I didn't hear about this. I must have missed it on Twitter or something like that. Floating World, please just put like on your website, make a section of stuff that you've published that you can organize by release date. It would be very much appreciated. I think there's something similar, but it's still kind of tough to get to. Anyway, so Power Comics, this was their first trade paperback. They also published single issues. So on the subject of Vendetta and the work of Steve McCardle, they also recently published, this was one that came out of nowhere that I was like, huh, what? Crowbar. So this is the other comic that Steve did. It's in the world of Vendetta. And I'm not sure why it wasn't published in the Vendetta trade paperback. Doesn't matter. They did these issues and there's 2 of them that were published. One that was never published and is here for the first time. And while there isn't that much context in here as far as interview and stuff like that, you kind of get it all in the Vendetta trade paperback. But here you get the rest of the stuff that Steve did. I mean, it's in the same world. And it's just a blast. And the only unfortunate thing about these single issues is that they're going to get really hard to come by versus the trade paperbacks. But you can buy this if you don't have a local comic retailer who got it. Thankfully, the Beguiling in Toronto had this right on the shelves right when I walked in. I was like, wait, what is this? You can pick this up at Floating World Comics directly, and it's, you know, the cover price. So would recommend going to that website. I'll put the link in the bottom. So this is kind of like the imagization, like I said, of indie comics that like they were inspired by this kind of can-do attitude and the manga inspired like style and lots of bags of people like Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee. But then Power Comics have also published stuff that wouldn't fit within those parameters. And the first one they did was a comic called Lance Stratton. It also falls within these categories, but it's in my long box somewhere because it was published quite a while ago and I couldn't find it. But they also recently published this one, Earthman, the sublime interstellar works of Robert Nunn. I mean, just look at this cover. This is like something that you would probably draw in junior high, the kind of style of it. But that's why it's special, because most publishers would not touch this because it doesn't hit that level of technical chops that you expect comics to do. But the bargain bins are littered with comics that are technically polished but boring, and they have nothing in them. And Earthman was a true mystery, and Evan talks about it in the intro here, that he found this in a long box, had no idea what it was, because it felt like something that was drawn by someone who had never really read comics, and that it also felt kind of auto-translated, like it was someone who English wasn't their first language. The plot of this one is, boy, it's tough to sum up, but there's a vampire on the loose, and there's spacemen that are chasing them. So the story of this comic and why it looks as retro as it does, even though that it was published in the 1990s, is an amazing one. Evan and Gabe and Remy, I should say all their names because they're written right here. They actually tracked down the person who made this, and they have the story of how it came to be. And it's amazing. I love that it's published like this. It's even published, I mean, this would usually be a negative, but I'm not a huge fan of like glossy stuff. Pages, especially when it was never really meant to have glossy pages. So this kind of like newspaper print is a good recreation of how it probably originally looked, and it gives the tactile feel of reading these comics. This is amazing. It's so much fun. Like, you will not find a comic on these stands that reads like this and is not doing it in an ironic way, because this is not someone who is approaching it and trying to do something that is, old school. This is someone that is just really into comics and is just trying to express it with the skills that he has. And so you not only get the Earthman comic where he fights vampires. Oh, this is my favorite panel. I actually posted this on Twitter, where it's like, no, she's still alive, needs a blood transfusion. Granny witch it. Yes, there is a witch. And the robot will take care of her. A robot? It's trained to give blood transfusion. And then you see the robot getting ready to go at it. So not only do you get this Earthman comic, but you also get the other comic that Robert did. I mean, you get not only Earthman, you also get a bonus one here, which is in color. You get Torch, which was a Christian superhero comic that he does. According to Evan in the intro, this was supposedly published, but Evan has never run across it. So this is like the only time you can really read this. And Remy writes a great essay giving context to this, because it is a little offensive considering that it is a Christian comic. He talks about where it came from and why it is the way it is. And it's just a blast. This is, again, an amazing package of something that would have probably rotted away in bargain bins and not have been appreciated in any way. But these guys at Power Comics, they went all out to put this together. And most exciting of all is at the back of this comic. Okay, maybe not most exciting of all, but the fact that this exists is the most exciting part. But when looking to the future, actually it's in the end of Crowbar here, they tease what's coming up next. And it is like the ultimate outlaw / Power Comics. New York City Outlaws, Ken Landgraf's book, finally getting republished. I'm so excited about this. I wonder if they're going to do the blood red pages of one of the issues. I'm sure they do. Compared, if you look at what they did before, they're really going for that best experience you can get short of buying these books. Like New York City Outlaws was one of those books that you could get in the bargain bins for like $1 back in the day. But thanks to all of these websites hyping it up, it's been really difficult to get your hands on, especially the complete run. So I'm overjoyed that's coming out to trade paperback. You also have John Tar, which I've never read, but is the Power Comics guys. They love this comic. They love it. And Savage World, which I'm not familiar with. I know they've talked about it on their YouTube channel, but I can't really speak to it. And this page is awesome too, because, I was pointing out in the Vindicator, like these old, send out for this stuff, like a t-shirt with the Lance Stanton logo on it. And you would see these, and I would always wonder, like, who's ordering this? Is this available? But this one definitely is. So if you want a Lance Stanton t-shirt, you can pick it up. So these 3 comics, technically 4 with Lance Stanton, like I said, you can pick them up at Floating World Comics. And if you have any interest in this stuff, pick it up. I don't know what would happen, like if they're not selling these books, like if doing the single issues is not a financially secure decision. These could disappear, and that would be devastating if Evan and his gang could not continue to do these reprints, because nobody else is. I mean, like companies like Fantagraphs have done some kind of like out there comics, but this is very specific, and no one has really touched it because they feel that they haven't felt that a market was there for. There's definitely a market. That market is me. And hopefully people watching this and are interested and have lasted to the end of the video. So pick these up. If you enjoyed this video, follow Power Comics on YouTube. They have a channel. They do not have enough subscribers, so subscribe to that stuff. They're always posting videos. Subscribe to their Instagram, and make sure to like and subscribe to this channel as well. I talk movies, comics, anything else that comes up to mind. So subscribe, and I will keep making these videos.